Hello and good evening to everybody. Welcome to all the students of English at the Faculty of Arts, University of Basra. Wish this finds you sound, good and healthy. Please stay home, stay safe and stay tuned and keep working behind walls. This is the only way to keep you safe. Well, this is Dr. Muhammad Al-Ashtar and this is a course on academic research for the third year students of English day and night classes. And this is a series of presentations offered to you online. Dear students, in this first session, I will talk about how to develop a research outline, which is considered by many of you research fatigue. Let's go to the first slide. In this slide, the major intended learning outcomes are listed as follows. By the end of this session, you will be able to develop a better view of a research outline, nature, and types. And you'll be able also to understand the basics of an outline, to understand and develop ways for organizing an argument which is considered as most significant for writing any research paper. And also, you'll be able to develop paragraphs that support your argument and organize and connect ideas in your writing. And the last one, develop your research project in a logical and systematic format. You know, these are the major intended learning outcomes that help you to develop a better view by the end of this session. Definition and types. This slide gives us an overview of the definition of an outline and its main types. An outline is defined basically as a formal system used to think about and organize your paper. What does this mean? This means, for instance, you can use an outline to see whether your ideas connect to each other, what order of ideas works best, or whether you have sufficient evidence to support each of your points. Outlines can be useful for any paper to help you see the overall picture. And this definition also goes in line with its major types. There are two types of outlines, topic outline and the sentence outline. What's more significant about outlines is that outlines help you to make sure you cover the key points and guide your research. And the topic outline, on the one hand, is the one that is particularly useful when you are dealing with a number of different issues that could be arranged in a variety of ways in your paper. On the other hand, the sentence outline is done in full sentences. It's normally used when your paper focuses on, for instance, complex ideas that need to be detailed and complex subjects. So the sentence outline is especially useful for this kind of paper because sentences themselves have many of the details in them. A sentence outline may also allow you to include those details in the sentences instead of having to create an outline of many short phrases that goes on page after page. So these are the basic things to talk about the outline types. Let's move to the next slide. One of the questions that could be raised, what is the purpose of an outline? Basically, it develops the structure of your argument, your claim, body, and conclusion. So it's just like a roadmap to the reader. It can be simple or detailed, depending on the topic in question. It uses an Unban or a letter system, and involves change. Outlines can be changed. Outlines is not flexible. It's cyclic, does not take one linear form. It could be changed at any time of the research writing process. In one of your reading books entitled Writing Research Papers, A Complete Guide, 14th edition, Lester and Lester mention on page 161, a formal outline is not rigid and inflexible. You may and should modify it while writing and revising. In every case, treat an outline or organizational chart as a tool. So this indicates that the through nature and framework of an outline, something changeable. You can work out the way you like while you are working on your research. The question now, how do I create an outline? So to create an outline means that you need to define the purpose of your paper. You should define it very well. What's the purpose? What's the main objective of your paper? Is it argumentative, expository? Is it something cause and effect, research-like, and many more, in fact. So also you need to determine the audience you are writing for. What type of audience are you writing for? For academic, for researchers, for laymen, and many more. And develop your main thesis. So you need to create your main claim. The main claim should be placed at the very beginning of your introductory part of in your research paper. So these three should be considered carefully and planned properly before you do anything, before doing anything else. Then after this process, then you should brainstorm ideas and organize these ideas, and then order and then label. What does this mean? In doing writing, the first thing writers do is that they brainstorm. Brainstorming means that writer should list all the ideas that he or she wants to include in his or her paper. So brainstorming is one of the powerful techniques of collecting ideas. Then after collecting ideas, you need to organize, to relate ideas together, to get rid of the unrelated ones. Then you should arrange materials in let's say, in subsections, headings and subheadings, or moving from general to specific, or from abstract to concrete. After that, you should also create main and subheadings by giving labels. According to Lester and Lester on the same page, they stipulate that formal outline can be important because it classifies the issues of your study into clear, logical categories with main headings and one more levels of subheadings. So this is so important actually in order to create an effective outline. Now the question how to develop an outline for your paper is going to be discussed in the following slides. How to create an outline that's better and faster. Let's get started. The first thing you should basically know is that you make a list of all the sections in your paper. You start with introduction, review of literature, methods, findings, discussion and conclusion, and references. Please remember that you should include all these 6 building blocks in your research paper. We'll talk about each one in a little bit detail. So before this, I would like just to give you a hint about paragraph parts. You should remember all the time that These three major elements, claim, evidence, and discussion, should constitute your argument, your main argument. Your claim is the topic that, or the thesis statement that should be placed at the very introductory part of your research paper, where your socialize. It ties to the overall argument and thesis. The evidence includes the secondary sources, the review of literature, methodology, discussion, conclusion, primary sources and findings, which constitutes the main body of your research paper. And the last part would be the discussion, in which you build connection and also to make your evidence clear and your claim and thesis, and you try to make some implications of your research and try to build upon it accordingly. So these are roughly the main foundational parts that constitute the paragraph in any research paper. Remember, please, also to write down the major points, facts or arguments under each heading. We talked about the 6 headings before. Now you need to create kind of subheadings, like introduction should include, for instance, topic 1, topic 2. The same thing goes with the review of literature, with methods, with findings, with conclusion and discussion. So under each major heading, there should be subheadings that go under. I will give you some sample outline, which seems to be very easy. So the first part, you should include your thesis, statement or claim, or your research claim that should be placed at the very beginning of your introductory part. The main heading, as you can see here, is subdivided into subheading 1 and subheading 2, which is labeled IA and B. Under each subheading, you need details. Detail 1, detail 2, 3, etc., depending on the topic in question and on the complexity and depth of this topic. As you can see here, for example, B takes 3 details while A take 1 detail. It's okay, no problem, as I told you. The second main heading also takes 2, A subheading and B subheading, and also we need details under each one of these, and so on and so forth. So this is a very simple thing that you need to create for your research paper. You remember very well at the very beginning of our teaching intervention in October and after, I just reminded you to think about your outline in an easy way, just to think about the major themes, and then you divide up these major themes into sub-themes so that you can create an effective outline. So please just follow this outline and try to compare it to what you have done so far. Now we'll follow what's called an outline strategy for each major section, major foundation of your research paper. We'll start with the introduction, the outline strategy for introduction. In the introductory part, the researcher should think about defining the problem and show significance. Who is it a problem for? And also to include thesis. These 4 things should be taken seriously, should be put, let's say, probably in the introductory part, should be placed in this place. And also remember that when you start writing your introduction, you should think of the potential questions, what type of questions that this research is guided by. Put it differently, when you start writing your introduction, you should think about the background of the problem. Why is it a problem? And why we define it as a problem? Why is this problem significant? And are there any related problems to my problem, to my own problem of this research? And who is it a problem for? You should define all these things, right? And then you develop a thesis. The literature review, the outline strategy for the literature review. section of your research paper, you should consider the following headings in your review of literature whenever you develop it. You should consider the terms of the discussion, terminologies, definitions, concepts, and so on. How are these terms defined? Who has defined them this way? And also you need to consider the common ground. What are the agreed upon problems? Are there any researchers or previous studies who share the same problem, who share the same studies? What findings tend to agreed upon solutions? Do you think that there are solutions who are set before or shared by some other previous studies? Are there any different findings? What differences have been uncovered? What competing solutions have been offered? And many more actually to cover in the review of literature. Literally, review of literature means the previous studies. You should consider all previous studies, all previous literature, all theoretical foundations and background about your research paper. You should consider you should take both sides who are for, sides who are against this, sides who support this theory, and sides who does not support this theory, and so on and so forth. The methodological part in your research paper should consider who was studied, how were they studied, what instruments of data analysis, what time frame, how was data analyzed, what are the limitations. You should consider, in fact, the research design in this, and also you should consider many more ideas to design your research so beautifully. So in this methodological part, you need to design your research according to the methods of data collection. What methods of data collection are to be employed in conducting your research? Is it an interview, for instance? Is it based on, let's say, statistical analysis, a questionnaire, for instance, an exit attitude survey? Are you going to make an experiment or empirical part by, for instance, conducting a teaching intervention? Are you doing a critical analysis? Are you making a thematic-based study approach? And many more, actually. And also, you need to define procedures of data collection and procedures of data analysis. How to analyze data, what instruments of data analysis are used. Are you analyze your data qualitatively or quantitatively? And of course, you should define these by choosing the appropriate approach, whether it is a qualitative or quantitative approach to data analysis and study. And also, after presenting and analyzing data, you need to evaluate data and present those data and define your limitations of the study. And in fact, there are many more. It's so complicated area. The fourth part of your research, the findings. You should outline your findings this way. What did the data show? And in every study, almost, there are many different ways to show data, either by using tables, for instance, using tabulated thing and put your data inside and show it to the reader, just like using numbers, statistics, or graphs. Maybe you use maps or charts just to show your data. And also, when you put all these things together, please do not repeat what you show in the table, right? Just say it concisely and that's it. Okay, just say, okay, when I did my teaching intervention and examined the control and experimental group, I found out that 13 students are, for instance, using higher intellectual techniques than those group. Just say precisely what you should say. Don't repeat what you say. And in the discussion and conclusions section, you need to identify what findings mean. Okay, what do the findings mean to you and to the reader? You need to interpret these things. What are solutions to the problem? Do you think that there are some possible solutions? If so, what solutions that are considered to be best and why? And in the concluding section, you need to make a kind of what's called action, to be a call for action, right? Which is required in this case. and the limitations of the study. And also you may include sections like recommendations of the study, recommendations for further research and for further policy or action plan for future, for your, let's say, for your institutions or bodies. So far, we have covered now the building blocks of any research paper and what kind of outline, an effective outline that should be considered. So I will give you some outline samples, in this case, some guidelines. These are not considered perfect outlines, but very basic ones. You can create your own outlines. Your ideas might be differently from the one you will see shortly. The first research, let's say, is about gun control and the government measures. In this research paper, the researcher has divided up his research into 4 sections, started from introduction and ended up to the conclusion, to the concluding session. In the major heading of his introduction, he included 2 subheadings like background information, history and government laws about gun control and the government measures. While in the subheading B, he tries to bring kind of controversy over gun control nowadays. So in fact, if you link these together, you will find out that these 2 subheadings are closely associated with the main title, the main heading, right? So the subheadings should not be separate, should be related. In the second major heading, the researcher shows us the US constitutional right to keep and bear firearms. He tried to talk about guns, how guns provide protection for people, for the individual, and how bans will cause more crimes. So he tries to defend this gun's allowance or permission, you see? And in the third part, he talked about the gun reduction, how gun control will reduce unjustified death, you know? So he provided us with the 3 major subheadings that support his argument. He has mentioned mental health crisis and gun control issue, school and mass shootings, can we prevent them? The importance of gun control in a modern society. So he tries here to support his argument that he stands against, in fact, against this gun permission or to make gun control, you know. So he provided us with 2 opposing views, one who stands against and one who stands for. That's really, if you look at this outline, you'll find out that sounds very good. I mean, it's workable. It functions well. Okay. And the second example about human trafficking. If you look at this outline, you can also create your own, and your own outline might be different from this. So the researcher here introduces the definition of human trafficking and the main causes of human trafficking, why people are considered as human traffickers, for example. So he gives us the reasons of human trafficking. In the second section, the researcher tries to show us the current global situation of human trafficking, demographics of human trafficking, social conditions of the most vulnerable subgroups. So the researcher tries to tell us something about this global phenomenon, how the world, let's say, the world bodies try to figure out with the human trafficking, what a human trafficking means to them by, for example, making wide surveys of demographics of human trafficking, and also studies the social conditions of this. So the researcher here in this case goes globally, right, to talk about this issue. Later, he talks about how to stop human trafficking by showing 3 different ways, by either making penalties for human traffickers, by punishing those people, ways of victim protection, and making some kind of rehabilitation, or he was in quest of international cooperation. So 3 basic ways that are closely connected to banning human trafficking in this case. And the last part, he put his conclusion as the last part of his human trafficking research. So if you just put this under microscope, both the first one and the second one, you'll find out that this is really very, very simple kind of outlines. The outline that follows either, let's say, short phrases, noun phrases, or complete sentences, depending on the topic in question. And if you'd like to know more about the formal outlines, you can go to your textbook. As I told you, Writing Research Papers, a complete guide written by Lester and Lester. That's on page let me see. It's 161 through 6164. You'll find everything there, and possibly you can get some useful ideas. Moreover, I would like to add one thing. To the degree to which you continue the subheadings, I mean, the continue generating subheadings will depend in part on the complexity of the subject. Subheadings in a research paper seldom carry beyond subheadings of the 3rd degree. And this depends, as I told you, on the complexity of your. Thank you very much indeed for your kind attention. And this is enough for today. So our next session will talk about how to develop your paper abstracts, introductions, and perhaps we will also shed light on APA citations. Thank you indeed. If you have any questions, please, or queries, just send me yours on our Google Classroom. And thank you so much, and wish you safe days. Goodbye.